Hey, good evening, everybody. How's everyone doing tonight? Awesome. Good to hear. Yeah, doing pretty good. So today we're going to talk about our third P, which is place. We're also going to roll that into kind of a larger discussion about digital marketing. So here I have this kind of roadmap laid out. We're going to talk about place first, then we're going to talk about the survey results, and then I think we'll have a break somewhere after that. And then in kind of the back half of the class, we'll talk about e-commerce, m-commerce, and platform marketing. So let's get right into it. Place is missing from a lot of marketing textbooks. There's no chapter called place the same way there is, for pricing or product or promotion. It's kind of sad. It's called the forgotten P sometimes. It's not really forgotten. It's just rolled into something bigger. So the bigger concept that place is rolled into is the idea of a marketing channel. So the idea of place is that it's where your customer can access your product, right? But to get the product to the customer, it's not just about kind of like, what retail store are you in? Sometimes it's not about being in a retail store. And oftentimes it's about getting the product from kind of the initial place where it's manufactured or where kind of it's being warehoused sort of all the way to the consumer, right? So you can think of the marketing channel as being potentially your choice of how your supply chain is going to operate. How are you going to deliver that product to the consumer? Okay. So the marketing channel, you hear a lot about kind of multi-channel promotions, things like online versus in person versus by mail. So all of these are channels, and you can think of them as different ways to reach your customer, to get the product to them, to allow them to access the product, and also, ways that you can be promoting to them. Okay. So like with our other Ps, the choice of place is going to have interdependent ramifications for how you choose your other Ps. Okay. But marketing channel is the bigger concept. And it does involve choosing where the product is eventually sold, but it involves so many other things too. Okay. So how does it get to where it's eventually sold? In particular, are you responsible for getting it from either the manufacturing hub or the warehouse to the retailer, or do you rely on someone else for that? Who is providing information to and who is collecting information from consumers, right? So when consumers access your product, if you want them to be repeat consumers, typically you're collecting information from them. Who's doing that? Are you doing that? Or are you kind of contracting it out to wherever you're selling it? This one's important. Who gets control over promoting the product, right? When you choose your marketing channel, say you're choosing to sell your product in a big retail store, big retail stores tend to have their own promotional schedules, right? And their own kind of limits and their own resources. Are you going to give them the option of promoting your product? Or would you prefer to keep control over that yourself, right? Where you choose to make it available will have ramifications for who gets control over promoting it. Similarly, who gets control over pricing of the product, right? For exactly the same reasons as who gets control over promotion, you may want to choose wisely, right? Who provides service and who provides after-sale care for the product, right? Again, a large retailer will have all of that in place, and a budget retailer may not have any of that in place, whereas a very high quality retailer would have all that in place, right? Or you might want to skip retailers and disintermediate, which is something we'll talk about later in the lecture, and provide that care yourself. Right? Depending on where you're selling it and who you're selling it to, the product needs to be financed before it can actually reach the shelves, right? You make the product, you manufacture it somewhere, and then it's on a boat these days for many months before it reaches shelves, if indeed you're trying to sell it in person, right? Who's bearing the cost of that inventory while that's happening? And even before that, while you're developing the products. These are all really tough questions that a company needs to deal with when you're kind of choosing your channel partner. Very few companies are going to do all of this in-house. Some big companies do, but even big companies will outsource a lot of this, okay? So we're going to proceed today by kind of looking at a few examples of products, including kind of the survey example with Huawei. But we're going to start with kind of this small company, this new product, and we're going to see kind of what goes into them making the channel choice that they do. So this is a product called Duo. It's a turntable with a detachable speaker, okay? So you can see like this black circular thing is a vinyl disc. So that stores music, right? Probably like 10 or 15 songs tops. And the yellow thing is a detachable Bluetooth speaker, so you can play from the record through the speaker, okay? So new product, plays music, plays vinyl records. Now, Duo chose to kind of partner or chose to release through a website called Kickstarter, okay? So what is Kickstarter? Have any of you guys heard of Kickstarter before? Yeah, it's crowdfunding for projects. Has anyone crowdfunded anything on Kickstarter? If you have, type in chat the most interesting thing that you've crowdfunded. So while you guys do that, Kickstarter is a website where consumers can search through products and they can back products by promising some money, okay? So I'm a consumer, I go to the Kickstarter website, I can back a product by promising some money to this company Duo. And if a product receives enough backers, it's funded, okay? If that happens, then consumers who back the product actually pay the contribution that they promised, and they eventually receive the product according to a timeline that the product creator sets, okay? So Kickstarter is kind of wide open. Anyone can post a photo and product description on Kickstarter and kind of ask for backers. And if they get enough backers and it clears the funding threshold, then they get your money, okay? So Kickstarter is kind of a particular channel choice for releasing a product, okay? So let's kind of look at what are the ways that channel partners add value in general, and then we'll kind of walk through which one of these applies to Kickstarter, okay? So channel partners add value by kind of doing a bunch of the things that we mentioned, kind of answering some of the questions that we pose. They can gather information, they can help you distribute, they can help promote, they can help you set your marketing strategy by providing tools to segment and target. They can help you with manufacturing. They can help you with physical distribution, right? So actually getting the product to the retail store or getting it to the final consumer. They help with financing, they help with risk taking, and they help with after sales support for the product, okay? So, okay, let's keep these things in mind as we kind of walk through Duo's choice. So why would they choose Kickstarter as their channel? All right, so when you go to Kickstarter and you search for this product, at least when it was being promoted, when it was being kind of actively sort of funded and backed, you would see a page that looks like this, right? It's got some information about the product. This is Duo. It shows you a picture. It shows you a little bit about the product. You have a bunch of information tabs, okay? Consumers can gather a lot of information about the product on Kickstarter, right? And this is a website that gets a lot of traffic, which could potentially reach many consumers, right? So why choose Kickstarter as your channel? So this kind of helps you promote your product a little bit, right? or at least this provides information rather. Let's say that, because promotion is something separate. With Kickstarter, information about your product can easily get out there to people who might be interested in it, right? And that's not always easy to do, right? Trying to get information about your new product to people who might be interested, that's actually a really valuable service that Kickstarter is providing, right? How would you do that otherwise? Who would you pay? You'd probably have to pay someone, right, to get some sort of information out there or promote in some way. But Kickstarter kind of does it just as part of participating in their platform. Now, when you go to Kickstarter and you're trying to sort of back a project, here's kind of something that you'll see. You'll see this green button that says back this project. And above it, you'll see some numbers. So you'll see the total amount that's been pledged. So how much have people promised to contribute? Underneath that, we have the goal that was set by the project. So $26,000 goal. So that's what needed to be cleared in order for the project to go forward. 319 backers, 17 days to go before the funding window closes. Okay. So what's the key benefit here provided by Kickstarter? Producers can finance their product without taking out a loan or relying on a third party, right? This is another key benefit of launching through Kickstarter. Right? If you didn't have this funding, then what would you do? You're trying to make this turntable. Well, you'd probably try to find some factory where you can make it. You sort of outline all the specifications, which presumably you have. But then you need to take out a bank loan, right? You need to take out a bank loan to fund that initial run of product. By partnering through Kickstarter, Kickstarter helps you take care of the financing, right? A key benefit. And you also learn a little bit about what consumers might like your product, or if enough of them like it to actually sell this as a viable product. Okay, there's different options on Kickstarter for making pledges, for kind of backing the product. So you don't choose as a backer how much you want to spend. You choose from a set of kind of pre-arranged options. And so here we have one option on the left, pledge $229 or more. Then you get the Duo turntable and you get the protection cover. If you pledge $299, then you'll get the Duo turntable. You'll also get the speaker and you'll get the protection cover, right? So what does this look like? This looks like segmentation, right? Here we see segmentation potentially on, the benefits that people are getting, providing more stuff for more money. So Kickstarter lets you segment. And they also allow for price discrimination, right? So here's an option where you can pledge $6,270. And you'll get 30 Duo turntables and 30 protection covers. Okay, so you'll get a lot of products, right? Yeah, so Mohammed says, so they basically give you discounts and some extra features. So yeah, Kickstarter gives you the option of sort of having these different backing levels. And these creators have chosen to have like a quantity discount because they think that, selling this product to retailers is a good segment for them. So retailers are going to want to order bulk. So that's the last option. And then this extra feature one, they think some people, have different valuations for different features. So, these are all decisions that the creators of the product get to make that Kickstarter facilitates. That's a good question with what if the product doesn't go through, will they get a refund? We'll come back to that in a few slides. So right now we've kind of covered what does Kickstarter do. They help you fund, they help you segment, and they help provide information about the products. Okay, so what doesn't Kickstarter do as your channel partner? So if you Google Duo turntable with detachable speaker at the time, here's what you would have found. You see a bit of YouTube reviews from some random people who got it. And then at the top, you see Kickstarter as an organic link, but you don't see any advertisements, right? You see organic links at the top, but not sponsored links. So Kickstarter doesn't promote your product for you. They don't advertise, okay? So Kickstarter will not promote for you. What else does Kickstarter not do? So here we have a description from the creators of the product of the Duo turntable. And what they write is, we understand there'll be risks along the journey, but we are experienced, prepared, and have laid out solid production grounds. We've completed product development, and we've built a reliable production and logistics network. Okay. So highlighting that, they've built a reliable production and logistics network. That's from the creators of the turntable. That's not Kickstarter. Kickstarter doesn't help you with that. So if you have an idea, Kickstarter will not help you figure out how to manufacture it. And they won't help you figure out how to get it from the factory where it's manufactured to the final consumer. Okay. So no production network for you. You have to do that yourself. Okay. So they don't help you produce it. They don't help you promote it. And who's in charge of getting the Duo to the consumers and the backers, right? Physical distribution. Who takes care of this last step, delivery? Well, like I said, Kickstarter doesn't provide any support for getting the product from the factory to the consumers. So that's kind of up to you, right? You need to choose who you'll provide the shipping services. Okay, so they don't help you get it to the consumer. And now kind of to the point that's kind of been raised in chat, the FAQ section of Kickstarter. Suppose you buy the Duo and it breaks, right? So your product malfunctions. So you go to the Kickstarter website because that's where you bought it, right? Do any of these links provide you with assistance? Is there any link here that says, what to do if the product breaks? No, there's nothing there, right? And in fact, there's a link. Why can't Kickstarter guarantee projects? They don't provide any service. So they'll explain why they can't provide the service. But if it doesn't work, you're kind of out of luck, right? And like it's been said in chat, Kickstarter doesn't guarantee that the product gets delivered at all, right? You can give your money to this person. And this has happened in a lot of high profile projects with big funding numbers, that they just take the money and run. They never actually deliver the product. And you're out the money. You don't get anything back for it, okay? So after sales support's not provided, delivery is not provided. No guarantees are offered by Kickstarter. So the customer service team for Duo exists, right? If you go to that page on Kickstarter, you can find, here's the product development team. And on the bottom left, here are our 2 customer service specialists, and this cat who, potentially can help you out. We have a lot of other people on staff, right? Including engineers, marketing managers, supply chain managers, graphic designers, sales managers, etc. But at the end of the day, Kickstarter has helped with only these things. No, I'm actually sponsored by Kickstarter. Yeah. So everyone start a project. Information gathering and distribution is in orange. They help with that. Financing, they helped with that. Risk taking, they helped with that, right? Everything else, they did not help with. Yeah, I wish. Everything else they didn't help with, right? And that's fine. That's just the choice you make when you choose who to partner with. So here we can look at another product that's operating in the same space, right? So House of Marley is a brand that kind of popped out of nowhere. And they make speakers and they make headphones, right? Does anyone know where can you get House of Marley products? Right, Best Buy. Anywhere else? Yeah, I think you should be able to get them on Amazon. You can get them online, yeah, directly through the House of Marley website. Sponsored YouTube videos. Yeah, typically those will take you to a retailer or storefront. Um, I think I've seen these in like Shoppers, like Audio Video 2000. I think that's the name of the store. But you can kind of get these at retailers is the point, versus the Duo, you could only get it from Kickstarter, right? So for House of Marley, they basically decided on their channel partners, they would sell it directly. They would sell it themselves on their website. But they could also sell it through Best Buy, right? They chose to partner with Best Buy. You can get it through the Best Buy website, or you can get it in store at Best Buy. So let's focus on their channel choice of selling through Best Buy. When they could have chosen to launch a Kickstarter, right? Marley is like a recognizable name, right? Coming from Bob Marley. Actually, this is started by his son, Rohan Marley. But the Marley name is good, potentially would have had a big backing on Kickstarter. So why did they choose to go through Best Buy, right? And yeah, the question is it cheaper on their website or these different products? I think these might be the same product when I looked at it, so it would have been cheaper on their website at the time. And Firas asked, does House of Marley choose which retailers the YouTuber forwards the potential customer to? That's a great question. I'm assuming, so I don't know kind of the contracts that retailers typically, or that brands typically sign with YouTubers, whether it necessitates sending like the referral link to the House of Marley website or to Best Buy. But I assume they do specify it. Yeah. So advantages of partnering with Best Buy, right? Gather information and combine it with their big customer database. So you can reach a big market of consumers who are potentially, Best Buy already knows a lot about, so it already knows how to segment them and which ones to try to reach. Right? Best Buy engages in promotion, in finding new customers, and in price discrimination. So they do all of this kind of promotional activity and discounting activity that would all be taken care of, right? And physical distribution completely taken care of. So Best Buy assumes a lot of risk, right? They pay for the inventory before they know it's going to be sold or not. So, they kind of shoulder that cost, the time between taking on the inventory and selling it to the final customer when you actually earn the profit, right? Geek Squad, what's that? It's their kind of in-house service team. So if you have a problem with the product, unlike with Duo, with just kind of those two people, with this product, you call up your Best Buy or you go in person, and these professionals will take a look at it. Okay? So they already have a sophisticated customer care system in place. So when we think about what are the advantages of partnering with Best Buy, they kind of do the things in orange, right? So they help gather information and distribute information about your product. They help promote. They help you set strategy. So they don't help you manufacture, right? That's still up to you, but they will help you distribute, and they will take care of after sales support, right? So when we think about the benefits of working with a distributor like Best Buy, you should be thinking, that the distributor has a lot of what are called economies of scale. Okay, so what is an economy of scale? It's a proportionate savings in cost that's gained by an increased level of production or operation, right? So thinking about it like this, if you double your activity, if you double the amount of product that you're manufacturing or the amount of service that you're providing, there's an economy of scale if it costs less than twice as much after you've doubled, right? So your costs are kind of going down per unit. And a firm that handles activities for multiple products can potentially do it more efficiently than duplicating activities for each product because of the fixed costs involved in most activities, right? So with most activities, like say setting up a retail store, there's a big fixed cost. You have to pay rent, and that's regardless of how much product you end up moving. If you want to set up a service network, you need to kind of set up all that branding, set up that infrastructure. And that's kind of regardless of how many customers you end up having, right? So economies of scale arise when there are large fixed costs. So when we think about going through a distributor or not, through a distributor, you faced, as the producer of this product, you no longer need to incur fixed costs for a lot of things. You don't need to set up your customer service network. You might not need to set up all your promotion and branding activities, right? So it's kind of a low fixed cost, but you get a lower margin on each unit sold, right? Versus doing it yourself, you're often having to pay this high fixed cost, but you'll be earning a high margin on each unit sold, okay? So it's more profitable if you can sell a lot to do it yourself. But you do need to kind of feel like you're going to be selling a lot to be able to incur these high fixed costs. Yeah, Mohammed?
So, Prof, I was wondering that, did you explain what is economies of scale? I don't remember from my economics class. So how do things get like cheaper as you scale up?
Yeah, good question. So when you think about your cost structure as a business, think about running a store, right? So you pay rent on the storefront, right? And that's basically a fixed cost. Even if you sell 0 units, you still have to pay rent. To get units, you need to pay, right, the wholesaler price. So you're buying units to stock in your store, and you're selling them. But kind of the average cost of those units, it incorporates the wholesaler cost that you're paying plus the cost of the rent that you need to cover, right? As you sell more and more units, the cost of that rent gets like divided over more and more units. So the average cost of what you're selling is going down, right? And the bigger your fixed cost, the more you need to sell to kind of spread that fixed cost over all the units that you're going to be selling, to get that to be profitable enough to cover your costs. Does that make sense? All right, perfect. So Firas asks, many tech products sold in Best Buy often have some of these advantages. So I'm going to go back to these ones. Even without a direct and exclusive deal, as a retailer, isn't it better to find an intermediary that helps distribute the products to many more retailers, negotiating separate contracts with more coverage? That's a great question. So we'll kind of come back to discussing what type of distribution you would like to have. So, House of Marley didn't just choose Best Buy, they also chose a bunch of other retailers to distribute through. So in the sense that you may want to not have all your eggs in one basket, or you may want the downstream retailers to be competing for your business because you think that your product is kind of going to be a net add for them, you may want to kind of go through a bunch of different retailers. But some products, they want to cultivate exclusivity, right? So they go through much fewer retailers. Okay, so the general trade-off with economies of scale based on these sort of fixed costs logic is if you're going to go through a distributor, typically you're going to think, I'm not going to be making that many units, versus if I'm doing it myself, I'm going to be making a ton of product, right? I'm going to be making a huge volume, which will allow me to cover those fixed costs eventually, right? So you should think about this as being kind of variation in the fixed costs across industries can explain why some industries do a ton of intermediation and some do less intermediation, right? So why some industries kind of always go through a retailer when they're selling products, while other industries always go to direct to consumer. Which kind of brings us to this idea of disintermediation. So disintermediation is a reduction in the use of intermediaries between producers and consumers, right? So buying the Duo directly through Kickstarter is an example of disintermediation, right? Because we're eliminating the retail storefront, right? There's no retailer. It goes directly from the factory to the distributor to the customer, right? Buying House of Marley directly through their website achieves the same thing, right? You kind of cut out this retail storefront, which is Best Buy. Shohei asks, can you start with a distributor and then do it yourself when you're big enough? Definitely. Yeah, that's always viable. So disintermediation kind of is a really popular topic and a really popular business strategy these days, but it doesn't mean removing channel activities, right? It doesn't mean that you don't need to figure out where you're selling your product, right? You've just chosen to sell it directly. And it also doesn't mean you can just wave your hands when you say, well, when it comes to customer service, like, I don't know, like, I'm not going to offer it, right? You still need to make decisions like how much of that are you going to do, right? Even though you don't have a retail partner who would be doing it for you, you need to decide, is it worth it for me to do that myself, right? So it's not like these decisions go away. You just kind of are making them in a different context, right? Or you're doing some of them yourself. Okay, so with that, that kind of brings us to our third product, which is the one I asked you about in the survey, Huawei. So Huawei, large manufacturer of smartphones in China. They had quite a large market share in 2017 Q1. It's, I think, gone up since then. And they're thinking of selling smartphones to the Canadian market and can either sell phones directly via online ordering or through an intermediary like Bell stores. Right? So the question I asked you guys is, what approach should they take? Should they do a direct disintermediated approach where they go directly through the website, or this indirect approach where they sell through Bell or Rogers or whatever store? So let's take a look and start. Let's start with indirect, with intermediated marketing, just because it was the more popular option. So let me see. Is Parnika here?
Hi, Professor, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. So why did you choose indirect?
So I chose indirect because like whatever I read about indirect marketing, it said that like this approach helps the company gain the attention and trust of potential employees, and it helps in the long-term growth of the company because Huawei is well known in China, but like it's like an unknown market to the Canadian, it's an unknown brand to the Canadian market. So I feel that because the consumers in Canada don't know about this brand, so it would be best to go for the indirect approach.
Okay, awesome. So brand recognition is not there for Huawei. So in order to provide information, maybe coming from a trusted source like Bell would help the brand. So awesome. So yeah, Bell can provide that kind of information provision service for potential customers. Awesome. Thank you, Parnika.
Thank you.
And then is Cole here? Okay, looks like no Cole. So let me ask. Yeah, Shoaib.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so I said indirect for similar reasons because Huawei doesn't really have good brand recognition in Canada. So obviously one of the things I was kind of reading up on was I think specifically with Huawei, they were going through some controversy in Canada. So I'm not even sure that they're allowed to sell direct anymore because of like some privacy issues. But I mean, kind of aside from that, if they were to sell directly, I think people, something about a sanction as well. So I think like people would be hesitant, like especially Canadians, they would probably be more hesitant to buy directly from Huawei, even if that was allowed. So I think like if they go through an intermediary, or I don't know, like Bell, for example, Bell could maybe bundle like their phone plans or something with an actual phone, and they could get some sales that way. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so there's some legal barriers, and then even if those weren't there, the reputation concern, right? Like the unknown brand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Shoaib. Vanessa.
Yeah, I just had one thing that I wanted to add to the indirect marketing. So again, I chose for similar reasons, but I was also reading about that if it's a standardized product, which we think smartphones typically are, then customers are more likely to buy from an intermediate as well. So like we think phone wise, I think Apple is probably one of the biggest ones and probably only ones that we would buy direct. But like if you're buying a smartphone other than Apple, you're more likely to go through like Bell or Rogers in that intermediate.
Right. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think Apple and maybe Google, I think you can get the Google Pixel direct from Google. But other than that, yeah, okay. Very good. So before we move on from indirect, are there kind of any of these channel benefits that you kind of see Bell providing to Huawei that might be kind of worth partnering with Bell for? So we've kind of talked about information provision. And so now this is physical distribution. Agent?
I would probably say just the overall promotion of it, like the familiarity. Because if they weren't able to get with Rogers, Bell is, I think, the second biggest supplier of
Right.
phone lines in Canada. So that's a pretty good start there. And like, just super side note, I don't know if you guys watched the new James Bond movie. That one had like a Motorola phone in it, and I was like really confused because I was like I didn't know Motorola still made phones.
Yeah, no, I think someone else makes them now. Like they
Yeah.
got the Motorola brand, but like,
Yeah.
the flip phone is back.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, awesome. Yeah, so promotion for sure. Like Bell can do it. They already have all that in place. People kind of know what they're getting with Bell. And then, yeah, so we have a bunch of things. After sales support, definitely, right? So, they have a network of stores where you can go in if your phone's not working. Huawei has no network whatsoever. And Shoaib says financing, right? So financing, how do we pay for most of our phones? We finance them, right? By paying over time through our monthly plan. So that requires a financing mechanism in place where basically, the consumer doesn't pay up front, but the retailer or whoever has the phone somehow like paid for that inventory up front. So they're kind of financing over time and getting revenue to cover what they financed. So they help finance as well, right? So these are all really good things that Bell would do for Huawei. And now what about direct? So some of you chose direct marketing. So let's dig in there a little bit. Is Isabella here? All right, no Isabella.
She answered in the chat.
Oh, did she? Okay. So Isabella says Huawei can sell phones online. Most people buy things online anyway. And maybe they can kind of do a test run. And they have more control with the production and with the pricing in particular. Yeah. So I think the point about pricing is a good point, right? So when we think about phones, premium phones go without saying they're priced at a higher price point, right? If Bell is deciding how to position Huawei, then they might choose to position it as not a premium phone, right? As a cheaper phone, which Huawei wouldn't have a ton of control over, right? They would have given up that control to Bell. So if Huawei wants to position it as a premium product, they would probably need to do it themselves, right? So yeah, very good. And then is Noor here? Looking for Noor. All right, no newer. So anyone else who chose direct? Yeah, Alexandra.
I just chose direct because I thought that they would be able to make more profit if they directly sold it, and also because they're a bigger company with like more manufacturers or producers, they would be more suited for direct marketing, because usually with like smaller companies, that's when they would do, you know, indirect marketing. Additionally, it could also be, I think, like Isabella said, like a pilot program. So if you just tried it out for maybe a month, see if it, or, you know, a appropriate period of time, a month or a year, see if it works or not. And if it doesn't, you could easily switch over to indirect marketing. When
Nice, yeah.
if you go indirect first and then you go to direct, it's just a little more difficult that way, I would think. I mean, you can do it either way, but I just thought direct would be easier to do first.
Okay, yeah. So potentially they're big enough to handle, like if they get big enough, all these fixed
Yeah.
costs of being a direct seller. But in the meantime, they could just test the market.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's great. Let's have Firas and then we'll wrap up the discussion.
I haven't actually picked direct, but I'm going to introduce a point that is for direct marketing regardless. I've been fortunate enough to work with a company who's distributed multiple phones for phone services, particularly in the MENA region, that is the Middle East, North Africa. And let's take, for example, the UAE, United Arab Emirates, as an example. So the main two like phone service providers are Du and Etisalat. And we've noticed something as we started distributing many of the products to both of them, is that the sales of the phones that we offered to them went down with the amount of competition within that phone service provider, meaning that like if we had iPhone, Samsung, let's say we also had Huawei, Xiaomi, and so much more, if there are so many options for the same amount of customers that Etisalat had, then they would end up dividing up the sales. So we've also noticed that a lot of them did end up just deciding on selling themselves after evaluating the cost of actually like making those contracts with them and losing on some potential sales, if not going on their own.
I see.
So yeah, so
it creates like a really competitive environment, like in the retail store when you're choosing your phone. If there's a ton of different brand options, that's kind of what you're finding.
Exactly. And people aren't moving from Rogers to Bell to whatever. So the amount of customers that Bell has, basically the same amount of people that you would expect to buy from them. And so they're all dividing up the pie. So if you moved and choose to direct, well, it kind of depends on what you expect your sales to be and what you plan on hitting as a goal for sales. But sometimes going direct is a little bit better.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, introducing the Huawei phones into the Bell store is not going to expand the market. I think there's very few people who would come into a Bell store from a competitor or come into a Bell store for the first time for their first phone because they saw Huawei being offered. So without that kind of market expansion effect, you're just dividing a fixed pie. So yeah, potentially not a good reason to partner with Bell, because they might realize that as well. And they might be fairly aggressive in how they kind of write their contract with you. Right. Awesome. Okay, that's a great discussion. Thanks, everyone. So yeah, channel services provided by Bell. You know, they do a bunch of stuff. They do financing, right? No question mark there. They help finance the phones for the final consumer, in addition to all these other things. But you do give up a lot of control over how you set your pricing, how you're positioning your product in the minds of consumers, you know, how you're promoting it. And, you know, even the product itself, right? Because after sales support constitutes a big part of the product for phones, right? So let's kind of return to House of Marley and then kind of wrap up this front half of the lecture. So House of Marley, you can get at Best Buy. You can get it at the Source. That makes sense. You can get it at HMV, and you can get it at Staples, right? So you're starting from kind of like tech stores. HMV is kind of like an audio store. Staples is like an office store, but they still have like some tech, right? Some selection of headphones, speakers, but then you can also get them at Loblaws, and you can get them at Shoppers Drug Mart, right? So House of Marley chose a fairly broad partnering strategy. They've gone through a lot of different retailers. Shoppers Drug Mart is not a place where people who want the highest quality sound, that's not where they go first. That might not be where they go ever, right? When they're looking for speakers, right? Loblaws, same thing, right? So they've gone for multiple channels, and this has kind of affected potentially how their product's going to be perceived. So we'll come back to what kind of distribution strategy this is in a few slides. We can contrast that with Bose, right? So Bose also makes headsets, and they have their own storefront, right? They have the Bose store, but then they also sell at Best Buy, but that's about it. Maybe they'd sell a little bit at the source, but they're definitely not selling at Loblaws, right? So you can think about these two as representing two different channel choice decisions, a fairly broad one, and then a somewhat more selective one. And then you kind of have channel choice decisions where it's just one store. So IKEA products, you can only get them at IKEA unless you're buying them used, but only at IKEA if you're buying them new. And they're responsible for kind of every element of their supply chain and marketing channel. Right? They manufacture, they get it to stores, they advertise, they gather information, they provide the aftermarket care, right? So IKEA products are only available at IKEA. And we can kind of think of these as three different distribution tactics, right? Where intensive distribution, that's House of Marley. That's as many points of sale as possible. So I'm just looking at the chat and I'm seeing a lot of points talk. As many outlets as possible. Selective distribution is a strategy where the marketer selects a set of retailers that specialize in their product category, like Bose. And then finally, exclusive distribution is a strategy where the marketer gives the rights to distribute its products to only one retailer, or potentially just one retailer per geographic territory, right? So each of these different choices, you can kind of see that they have consequences for all the other decisions that you plan to make, right? If you're going for an intensive distribution, you've given up a lot of freedom to set your kind of brand profile, right? Your brand position, right? You can't necessarily control if people perceive it as premium or not, if you're kind of selling it everywhere, right? Versus selective distribution, you kind of retain a little bit more control, but potentially the only way to kind of have full control is with exclusive distribution. Right? Okay, so Firas' points comment. Yeah, so this is really interesting. Points are a way of locking people in to be loyal to shoppers. So if someone's interested in Marley's, they can use their points to buy something they've been meaning to buy through shoppers using the points. So you can buy Marley's and get points and then use them, or you can use your shoppers points to get the Marley's, potentially, if you have enough points, right? This is a kind of a network effect with points, or more of a lock-in effect. But yeah, we can talk a bit more about that if you want to during the break, which is going to start now. And we'll meet back up at 6:09 in 10 minutes to resume. All right, let's get back to it. Okay, so yeah, I don't know if any of you guys looked at these letters during the break. We have kind of like parts of logos, parts of brands. Does anyone know the one in the upper left? Yeah, MasterCard, and then Uber. Does anyone know upper right? So upper right is Odesk. If you want to get something programmed for very little money, Odesk can help you do that. Bottom left, these 3 E's. Classic EEE brand. It's our good friend, the New York Times. And then Alibaba, yeah, that was the bottom middle. And then bottom right. No clue. So this one's eHarmony. So these are all kind of like reasonably large brands. They all have something in common, which is that they're all platforms, which is something that we'll come back to at the end of the lecture. We've already talked a little bit about platforms, the idea of, you know, they don't sell a product themselves, but they kind of bring buyers and sellers together. And these, you know, are all platforms that for the most part have done quite well in sort of the new digital economy. Some of them with a little bit of hiccups, like the New York Times, but we'll come back to these guys in a few slides. So first, e-commerce, what is it? So no one's totally sure. There's a lot of definitions floating around. I'll use one from kind of our resident expert at Rotman, Avi Goldfarb, who's kind of written books on electronic commerce, also on, you know, AI applications in business, privacy laws, ton of really interesting stuff. So check him out. But electronic commerce he defines as the exchange, distribution, or marketing of goods or services over the internet. So this is more than just stuff sold on the internet, right? This is not just like Amazon and, you know, the websites for different retailers. It's also this distribution and this marketing. It's not as much as, you know, everything that's all business that's conducted by email counts as e-commerce. But it is broader than just selling stuff. So let's look at an example of a company that was really helped by e-commerce that basically exists because of the forces that kind of e-commerce has unleashed. So I have this photo of their product in the upper left. This company is called Hubble. Yeah, the company with plagued ads of $1 contacts. Yeah, so honestly, like I don't use contacts, so I never get their ads. So their $1 contact is supposed to be totally safe, totally approved. How does it work? Start for free, first shipment, you'll get 30 Hubble lenses for free. And then subscribe your way, choose monthly or annual, and then cancel anytime. Okay, so they're a direct marketing contact lens company. And you don't get them in store, but they ship directly, right? So this is a classic example of a firm that engaged in disintermediation, right? They skipped the standard retail stores like Shoppers or, you know, wherever you kind of get your contact lenses, right? So e-commerce is their business model, right? They do all of their marketing, all their promotion, all their selling online. But how did kind of e-commerce help them sort of start out, right? What costs did e-commerce reduce to enable them to pursue this disintermediated business plan, right? So let's look at this nice quote from the New York Times, where they interviewed the two founders of this brand. So we have this quote that says, after many nights and weekends of emailing Asian manufacturers and reading up on FDA compliance, the vision of a viable business was coming into focus. Very nice. So FDA compliance, what's that? Food and Drug Administration. If you're putting something in your body or on your body, the Food and Drug Administration in the United States needs to sort of, you'll be kind of falling under their jurisdiction, under their regulations for safety, right? Good. So this sounds like they put in kind of like a heroic amount of work, and I'm sure that they did put in a ton of work. But when we look at this quote, we can see, all right, emailing. So that's what they did to reach out to the manufacturers who would end up making their contact lenses, right? Emailing is something that e-commerce allowed to happen, right? That the digital space allowed to happen. It was a reduction in communication costs, right? So with emailing, it's a reduction even compared to other instant forms of communication like telephoning. Telephone, you need to be speaking the same language. Emailing, you don't necessarily need to be speaking the same language anymore. Things can get translated very easily and cheaply, right? Asian manufacturers, right? So they're not manufacturing local. So these people are based in North America, but they reached out to Asian manufacturers. How did they find these Asian manufacturers, right? Where do you even start looking? I mean, 20 or 30 years ago, you would have flown out probably to, Hong Kong or something and try to find, where can I buy contact lenses, right? Where's the street that all the contact lens sellers have their shops on, and where are their factories, right? For them, they didn't need to do any of that, right? They just spent their nights and weekends emailing, and they found these manufacturers presumably through searches, right? Through business directories, online. So a reduction in search costs for them, right? And lastly, they read up on FDA compliance. In the past, you would have had a lawyer go to a library where they had a giant book of FDA regulations. For these guys, going to the FDA website and doing Control F on the giant document to find what regulations apply to their contact lens plan would have taken care of all that, right? So a reduction in search costs. So all of these features of e-commerce, we can kind of see clarifying into maybe two categories, right? Communication costs go down and search costs have really gone down, right? Finding information, be it about manufacturers, be it about regulations, whatever, finding that information has become much, much easier, right? And they were able to use that to start their business, right? Disintermediation has existed for a long time, right? It's not like the internet brought disintermediation, forth out of nothing. Here's a company, Land's End, who pursued a completely disintermediated business model since the early 1900s, right? Where they only sell through this mail order catalog, right? That's a disintermediated strategy where they just ship it from the warehouse directly to the consumer. But the difference between the mail order catalog and e-commerce are data collection costs and menu costs, right? Now it's extremely easy in e-commerce to collect data on your consumers. And what are menu costs? Menu costs are the costs of changing prices. We call it menu costs because for a restaurant, the cost of changing your price is literally, the cost of printing out a new menu. Right? For an e-commerce firm, the cost of changing your price is nothing, right? You go to your website and you change the price, or you change the algorithm that sets the price, whatever parameter you need to do, and it's that easy, right? As opposed to printing out a new menu, kind of distributing the new menu, or thinking about Land's End, right? Once you've sent out the catalog, that's it, right? The prices that are there are the prices that you honor for the rest of the season, right? Because this was kind of a seasonal catalog, twice or 4 times a year, right? So here's more things that e-commerce has allowed us to do, right? Compared to how these disintermediated businesses operated in the past, now you can collect information on your customers much more easily, figure out kind of what's selling and what's not. And if you're, the thing that's not selling, you can change the price of that extremely easily. And the thing that is selling, you could keep the price where it is or potentially raise it. Right? The costs of doing those things have gone way, way down. So here we see a giant of disintermediated selling. It's Amazon. Here's the Amazon page for a French press, which you can use to make coffee. Right? So let me ask you guys, compared to the shopping experience you get in like Canadian Tire, if you were kind of like looking at this thing on the shelf, what's different about the Amazon page for you, sort of from that customer perspective? Good, so you've got reviews. So a source of information. So a lot more information, but you can't touch or see the physical item in real life. More detailed descriptions, right? So more information. It's easy to navigate, no traffic. Pictures could be false info. Yeah, so you kind of have to rely on the reviews as well there. Yeah, easy to compare prices between similar products. Frequently bought together, right? Yeah. This compare offers thing. You see what? You see something that looks similar is like the price that it used to be, and then the deal price, right? You see that at Canadian Tire as well. And you also see this navigation bar, right, where you can, like Sabi said, it's extremely easy to navigate to another product, right? So Priya says the was price is usually a lie on Amazon. Yeah, there's a ton of price tracking tools now that you can install that will kind of like give you the historic or like the history of the price for Amazon. So you can kind of see, where it's been, and some of them will even correlate the price with the sales rank. Yeah, so you can see like if the was price, if they actually were selling anything, or if it was just kind of something they could cross out. Camel's good. Yeah. Honey is good, but their coupons never work. I think Helium 10 is if you are kind of serious about being a seller on Amazon, that allows you to analyze price and sales rank. So that's for people who want to set up a drop shipping business. But anyway, we have all these different things, which really like the main thing that these features on the page do is reduce search costs. So from the producer side, from the Hubble side, we saw a reduction in search costs allowed them to disintermediate and to start their business. From the consumer side, we see that there's a reduction in search costs, which potentially give us a better shopping experience, right? We have more information and we have easier access to different options, right? We also see, this stuff about storing stuff for later, right? Keeping it in your cart, and then Amazon will do some limited price history tracking for you, right? So here you can see a bunch of different textbooks and the price changes. Our price history is a reduction in search costs, definitely, right? You can see, am I getting a good deal relative to previous value if those previous prices are legit. But there's also something more here. When we look at these prices, you never see prices like this at Canadian Tire, right? 25.16 price increase to 27.21, right? What does that reflect? Which cost reduction or which feature of e-commerce do prices like this reflect? Why would Amazon set prices like 25.16 and then change it to 27.21 or 55.37 to 56.45? That's barely $1 change, and these numbers look weird, right? Like they don't end in 99 or even 59 or 00. Why does Amazon set prices like this? Some of them are set by the sellers, right? Okay, so then why would so some of them are set by the sellers and sometimes they include tax, right? Okay, sometimes that's true, but not always. Right? New sellers coming to the market, could be. So if we kind of look at what does e-commerce enable? Data collection and menu costs, right? Data collection, we have a very good sense now of the fluctuations in demand, right? Demand is going up or demand is going down. Demand is going up, raise the price. Demand is going down, lower the price. If you're trying to set an exact price, you want a demand curve. And if you have enough data, maybe you have that demand curve, right? So you can kind of maximize, you can set that exact price. And it won't be something that ends in 99. It'll be something that looks like the ones that we see there. Menu costs, you can set whatever price you want and you can change it as much as you want very, very cheaply. So why wouldn't you change it according to demand fluctuations or whatever fluctuations, right? We saw everything that goes into setting the price, costs, competitors, changes in CPV, all those things you can respond to very cheaply, right? So the frictions that we see reduced in e-commerce, right? A lowering of search cost on the business side, but also on the consumer side. And we see a lowering of menu costs, right? Prices can be quickly adjusted online. You can respond to demand, right? And the last thing that we see actually is that the distribution margins are reduced, right? By removing intermediaries, right? We kind of are able to get those high margins. We don't need to sell through a retailer who then adds their own margin to the final consumer. We can kind of take the retailer's margin for ourselves, right? So this phrase economic frictions, what is that? An economic friction is something that impedes the efficient functioning of a market, right? Something that prevents what would otherwise be valuable trade from occurring, right? So search costs are an economic friction, right? If it's hard for me to search, if it's hard for me to find information, that's kind of impeding. I might value that product more than the price, so I'd be willing to buy it, right? But I won't know without kind of doing all this costly search. The easier we can make search, the less that friction impedes, valuable trade happening, right? Same thing with menu costs, right? I might, as a manufacturer, be willing to sell this for a lower price, and in which case more people would buy it, right? Maybe my costs have gone down. But if it's just too expensive to change the price to print new menus, then I'm not going to do that. And then those people who could have bought won't, right? So another kind of economic friction reducing trade. When we think about e-commerce, it can be easy to get a bit carried away, right? So here's Whole Foods after they were bought by Amazon. That's the receipt on the right. And then the receipt on the left is before they were bought by Amazon. And you can see when you look at that total price of these two identical shopping lists, the price on the right is lower, right? The price has gone down after Amazon purchased it, right? So maybe this reflects something that Amazon's bringing to the table, like menu cost reductions or more data. They're collecting more data on consumers now, or something like that. Is this some kind of reduction in frictions or disintermediation that Amazon is able to deploy on the behalf of Whole Foods? In this case, the answer is no. It's just a scale question. Amazon is a bigger player. They negotiate with kind of if the negotiation goes wrong for a supplier and you're trying to sell through Amazon, Amazon presents such a large market for you that, you kind of don't have a good outside option, right? So as a really big player, Amazon can get better deals from its suppliers, right? So scale of Amazon is keeping costs low here, not necessarily e-commerce specific frictions being removed. So speaking of scale, here's a game that used to be super popular. Does anyone recognize this screen cap? Yeah, Candy Crush. Used to be super popular, more than 2.7 billion downloads. Actually, they had one of their best years in a long time in 2021. So I want to guess how many active users they had in the first quarter of 2021. Any number is good. 5 million, 1 million, 10 million, 250 million is how many they have in 2021 Q1. And how much did they make? Does anyone want to guess that? From these 250, from this 250 million active users? So about $1 billion, so $4 per user, several hundred million, yeah, so 609 million. So, just over $2, per player in Q1, right? Yeah, so tons of players, tons of revenue, and Candy Crush is free, right? It's free to play. And how do they make their money? If it's free to play, freemium. Yeah, what's freemium? So they harvest user data, potentially to serve you with ads, and then, yeah, in-app purchases, right? So it's free to play with microtransactions for add-ons, right? To get a more complete experience, or just to like level up, or kind of pay to win, right? So these add-ons can be as small as a few cents, right? So it's hard to think of how you could make this business model work outside of the e-commerce situation, right? Where could you sell things for just a few cents and still be kind of making a profit? The cost really needs to be close to zero, which it is, right? For Candy Crush, to make another 100 coins or a new cosmetic for you to equip in your game is zero cost for them, right? It's high fixed cost, right? They had coders creating all of these sort of in-app add-ons, but once it's created, it's zero cost, right? So zero marginal cost, but high fixed cost. What does that mean? Well, the economies of scale argument tells us they need to be making a lot, or like a ton of sales to make that a worthwhile business model, right? So they need high scale and minimal distribution costs, basically zero distribution costs, which can really only work online. Right? So with e-commerce, right, we also mentioned that all data is recorded. So we can target very finely differentiated segments based on past behavior, right? So based on, the browsing of statistics textbooks, you'll get more statistics textbooks recommended to you. Based on the browsing of French presses, you'll get more French presses recommended to you, right? So we have targeting, which is, in digital marketing, targeting is kind of gathering data expressly to attempt to make sales directly to the consumer, okay? So we have all of this data being recorded, and e-commerce can deploy it to advertise and target more effectively. Right. We also have kind of new business models where the data itself is worth something, right? So here we have a firm that kind of gives you this chat bot that you can talk to, right? And you chat to the chat bot for free. The firm can sell data to advertisers, right? If you're talking to the chat bot about something, an advertiser might want to know so that it can sell you or so that it can show you an ad based on what it perceives you to be interested in, right? So the chatbot itself, if it has no ads and it's free to use, well, it can sell the data, right? That's still valuable. Or you can sell the data to companies that are interested in making their own chatbots, right? If you go to most telecom companies these days, or almost any company, any large retailer, you're going to have a chatbot pop up that asks you if there's anything that it can help you with, right? And the training data for those natural language speaking chatbots, can come from companies like this that harvest it. Right? So let's kind of summarize the key features of e-commerce. We lower economic frictions, right? So we lower search costs for consumers and firms. We lower menu and distribution costs for firms. We lower communication costs, and we enable disintermediation, right? So all of these things are kind of key features of the modern digital economy. But what I want to emphasize is, all the business models that we see now, right? It's not like digital sort of marketing and like the digital economy changed everything. Like what it did was it lowered some key costs, right? And it lowered like these search frictions and these menu costs, right? That's what it did, yeah. And by doing that, it enabled some of these business models, like disintermediated business models, to grow more quickly, right? Models that had always existed but had been hampered by these high costs, like the menu costs, could now grow much more quickly, right? So it was more like a reallocation in the economy. It wasn't necessarily, creating a new economy, right? Another key feature that we covered, right? Zero or low marginal costs for online products, for digital products, right? That's enabled kind of business models like those of Candy Crush, and then rich data that you can use to improve your segmentation, your targeting, and choose all 4 Ps. Okay. So these are kind of our features of e-commerce that are relevant for marketing. But e-commerce is kind of, it's old news, right? Commerce that you do on your home computer is kind of 2000s. What about m-commerce, electronic commerce conducted on your mobile phone? So let's think, given what I said about kind of new technologies, they disrupt, they rebalance, but what they do is they, change costs, they change the relative costs of different things, right? So m-commerce, we kind of expect that it, accessing the digital economy through your phone is kind of similar to accessing it through your computer, but maybe there's some key differences that are relevant, especially for us as marketers, right? Like we know that search costs are lower online compared to offline. And we know that the internet kind of helps you overcome geographic isolation by reducing those search costs. You can kind of see products from everywhere. And, the scale of distribution systems now means that you can get products delivered to you fairly cheaply, right? So we know that these are things that e-commerce does. But how much does accessing the internet through a phone or accessing the internet through apps on your phone affect these kind of key features of e-commerce? So let's kind of take a look. Here's my French press again. And on the left, if I Google a French press, this is what I see. Versus on the right, if I Google a French press, that's what I see. And what are the key differences between these two screen caps? What's different about the same search on mobile versus PC? So Jonathan says, mobile uses your location more. Good, yeah, so it says Hudson's Bay, Indigo Books. Presumably these are places near me. It says the price is hidden on mobile, good. So there's less information displayed on the mobile version. And less options as well, right? We see only 2 options. They're both sponsored, like this one that I could kind of scroll through. And then there's one other sponsored one below, that's Amazon. So I need to scroll to even see an organic option. Yeah, in general, easier to shop on the PC. So, okay, does this matter? The fact that on the PC I see more all at once, I see more information. So when we think about this question, we can frame it as, does it matter if a link is displayed far down, right? Does it matter for the likelihood of that link to be clicked? And the answer is yes. On PC, if I move up one rank on the Google results, the odds of that link being clicked go up by about 25%, right? So higher results get clicked more often. That shouldn't be a big surprise, right? On mobile, that number is 37%. So it's half again as big, right? Which is substantial. So on mobile, if something is one rank higher, it's 37% more likely to be clicked, which means that if things are lower, they're a lot less likely to be clicked. So the further down you go with mobile, the number of clicks drops off rapidly compared to PC, right? So when we think about how this can translate, like what does this mean? Well, why is this happening? Why are people clicking so much less on the lower ranked links on the cell phone? Well, it's search costs, right? Even the cost of scrolling down is a cost compared to the PC where you see everything all at once. Scrolling down is costly enough to mean that you're going to do it less, right? So offline search costs are the biggest. They're still bigger than mobile search costs. It's still a lot harder to find that information offline, but mobile search costs are definitely bigger than search costs on your PC, right? So this key feature of e-commerce, that search costs are reduced, is mitigated when you're accessing kind of these digital tools, these digital storefronts through your phone, right? So mobile search costs are higher than PC search costs. Okay, so one key feature of mobile. All right, and what about the mobility of mobile users, right? So when you're a mobile user, you can obviously take your phone with you. When you're on your computer, you can't, right? So in that sense, does distance, right? Distance is something we identified as being a key barrier that e-commerce removes, right? That you can kind of remove it by making it easier to search, by making it easier to buy something from very far away or engage with a product that's very far away. So does the mobility of mobile users matter, right? Well, with a PC, if a store is closer to you, the odds of you clicking it do go up. They go up by about 12%, right? So distance matters on the PC, but it matters a lot more on mobile, right? With mobile, your odds of clicking go up by about 25% or 23% rather, if it's a mile closer, right? So mobile users much prefer closer things, right? Why is distance more costly on mobile? Could be different type of searches, right? On the PC, you look for stuff that's going to be shipped to you. On mobile, maybe you look for stuff that you need to go to, or at least there's more of those kind of searches. So it could be purely a selection effect based on the type of searches are just looking different on mobile. But the fact remains that if you're thinking about a mobile first strategy, you need to be thinking, I'm not going to appeal to people who are far away. If my primary customer is accessing my app or my website through their mobile device, distance is going to matter a lot more to them compared to if my target market is accessing it through their PC, right? So distance costs on mobile are higher than on the PC. And offline is still more costly than any of them. But what our takeaway should be here is that all of the classic features of the digital economy and e-commerce are kind of tempered by accessing them through a mobile device, right? Distance costs, search costs, all of these things, right? And this has all been from the consumer perspective, right? Because that's kind of the important thing with mobile. Okay, so let's move on to the final topic, which is platforms. So here's our 6 brands again. And like I said, these are examples of platforms. Basically a place, a product, a service that facilitates interaction between 2 groups that are interested in trading with each other. Right? So Uber facilitates interactions between riders and drivers. It says TaskRabbit. It should be Odesk. Odesk facilitates if I have a coding issue or a coding problem, and I would like someone to code for me, I can find someone to code for me on Odesk. MasterCard is buyers and sellers, right? I want to sell a product in my store. Someone wants to buy the product. MasterCard is a platform that they can use as kind of a joint transaction system, right? And a platform doesn't own the seller's contents. What it usually has are at least 2 sides that want to interact, indirect network effects, and often a fairly complex payment structure between the platform, the buyers, and the sellers, right? So recall from the pricing lecture last week, what are indirect networks effects? We talked about them with Tesla, right? The more sellers who are on the platform, the more valuable it is for buyers to join. And the more buyers are on the platform, the more valuable it is for sellers to join, right? Remember, the more supercharging stations there are, the more valuable it is for you to buy a Model Z. The more Model Zs there are, the more valuable it is for a company to install supercharging stations, right? So each side kind of benefits from the participation of the other. Contrast that with direct network effects, where it's just the more people who use it, the more valuable it is to use, right? And that's something like social media. Indirect network effects, they lead to a chicken and the egg problem. Buyers only want to join a platform with lots of sellers. Sellers only want to join a platform with lots of buyers, right? Direct network effect sites don't have that problem. You want to join if your friends are on it, but you don't need to kind of like convince another side of the market to jump in before you yourself has jumped in, right? With the direct network effect, you can kind of get this snowball going much more easily. So let's look at a few examples of products, which some of you guys will probably be familiar with, so you can answer whether it's a platform or not, right? So on the top, we have a platform, or we have a product, the PlayStation 5, which is a gaming console. So is the PlayStation a platform or is it not? And when we think about answering this question, we want to think about what is a platform, right? Are there 2 sides? Are there indirect network effects? Is there some kind of complex payment structure? So Puya says the physical console probably isn't, but the online community could be. Alexander Shoho say yes. So I'd argue, I'd be interested to hear, Puya, why you think that it's not. To my mind, you have game developers who want to get on, and then you have gamers who want to play on the console, right? The more people are going to buy the console, the more likely a game developer will be to develop the game, and then vice versa, right? Shapiro says PlayStation always refers to itself as a platform. Yeah, so I would call this a platform. They create content for the platform, game developers do, and they sell it directly to consumers. And there's kind of these 2 sides, right? And what about Coursera? Does anyone know, what is Coursera? Yeah, they offer online courses. Is Coursera a platform? Yeah, I think I would say so as well, right? We have Coursera hosting courses, which can charge students directly, but they need to attract course content and students, right? So students want to use it if there's courses on it. universities want to put courses on it if there's students willing to take them. Okay. All right. What about Toronto bike share? Right. So the Toronto bike share system has these bikes that you can rent from these stations, which are kind of located around the city. Platform? See some no's. Yeah, so if you're a potential user of this platform, the more bikes are in the platform, the more valuable it is for you to use, right? But there's kind of no two sides there, right? The city decides, they own and they provide the bikes and stations, right? You don't need to attract providers. So because you don't need to attract providers and all the payments are just kind of flowing to the city of Toronto, right? This is not a platform. The more bikes there are, the more valuable it is for you to use. But the city is not trying to attract bike providers, right? Okay, and then we have St. Lawrence Market, which is a large kind of building in or just east of downtown Toronto, which is basically a mall, which we kind of talked about as being a platform, right? You need vendors to fill the spaces and you need consumers who want to buy from those vendors. They both transact directly, but both of them also pay St. Lawrence Market. Right? Okay, so last two examples, platform or not. Mohammed says, is a used book library a platform? That's a good question. I would probably say no. Just because the used book library, they kind of are they're buying their inventory. You have to draw a line somewhere. So like, for instance, a retail store, a supermarket, is that a platform? They don't make the products themselves, but they buy the inventory and then they sell it on to consumers, right? They're not kind of trying to attract brands to be in their store based on, the number of consumers that brand will be able to sell to, right? The supermarket buys stock from the brand and then it's done, right? So any kind of those situations where you have an intermediary just buying stock and then the upstream supplier is done, we'll say that's not a platform. Yeah, I'd say a thrift store is not necessarily a platform either. Right? Once you've sold your object to this thrift store, you're kind of done with it. Right? You don't care about the thrift store's consumer or customer base. All right, so upper right, what's that a picture of? It's UTM. UTM circa a few years ago. Now it's like more buildings every year. Is UTM a platform? No. So yeah, you have professors and you have students, but the university just kind of pays the professors directly, their employees. So UTM owns the content, right? They're not trying to attract content based on students. They're not trying to attract content creators based on those content creators' expectations about their audience, right? Yeah. Netflix was kind of initially a platform, but kind of not really. And now they're definitely not a platform because they develop and create most of their own content, right? So let's wrap up. So platform pricing, like I said, it can be complex. You basically have two tools for each side. Yeah, Kijiji would be a platform. Two pricing tools for each side, buyers and sellers of the market, right? So you have membership fees and usage fees, right? So a membership fee, I'm a platform, I could charge a membership fee to buyers, right? You have to pay to be part of this platform, like a flat rate. I can also charge usage fees. Every time you use the platform, you pay a bit, right? The challenge is you want to attract both sides of the market. And like we discussed last lecture, The pricing rule is to charge a low price to the more elastic side of the market to attract them. So the more price sensitive side of the market, so you can get more of them on board. Then the less elastic side of the market, the less price sensitive side, will find it worthwhile to join because there's a lot of customers on the other side, or a lot of units on the other side they can interact with. And so they'll find it worthwhile to join, and you can charge them the higher price, right? So the less elastic side of the market, you'll then follow on with the higher price. Right, so with a credit card, do we have access fees, right? Or rather, do we have kind of membership fees? Yes, right? If you have a fancy credit card, you pay every year for the privilege of having that fancy credit card. Are there usage fees? No, not for buyers. Actually, there's negative usage fees for buyers because you get points, right? But there are usage fees for sellers, right? Sellers pay a fraction of the transacted sale price to the credit card company, right? Sellers pay fees, buyers get money back. Uber Eats, are there access fees? No, right? You don't have to pay to be a member of Uber Eats, but there are usage fees. Uber Eats kind of takes it from both sides. You kind of charge that delivery fee, and the driver doesn't get that delivery fee, right? They get maybe a small part of it, and Uber kind of keeps the rest, right? And what about PlayStation? Do we have membership fees? We do for buyers, right? You have to pay to buy the console. Sellers actually get support. They get subsidized to join the platform. Are there usage fees? I guess now maybe there are, with kind of like the online component. You have to pay every month to be part of the, PlayStation Plus or whatever. But there would be no usage fees for sellers, right? Keep in mind, all of this pricing is the platform. This is the platform's pricing. What you pay to the restaurant in Uber Eats or what you pay to the game developer, that's a separate pricing question. Here, we're just thinking about the platform's decisions. Yeah. So growing platforms is hard. Here's a quote from the founder of Alibaba, who said, basically I was zero. Well, he says zero revenue. I don't know if he means zero revenue or zero profit. But platforms benefit from size. They benefit from getting big because of this chicken and the egg thing, right? Just like with penetration pricing, market share can be good all on its own to induce these sort of network effects. What's the best way to grow? Well, we can see these three options pursuing very different approaches for how they charge each side of the market, right? Sometimes we as consumers pay, sometimes we get paid. Sometimes developers have to pay, or sometimes the seller has to pay, sometimes they get paid. So it's a broad range. This is still kind of a very poorly understood pricing problem because it's very hard to do. It's much harder to do than just kind of the standard monopolist pricing problem in economics, simply because there's a lot of multiple pricing equilibria, right? Because you have these sort of feedback network effects, setting the price becomes quite hard. So active area of research, what's the best way to grow? Use the pricing rule of thumb, but that's about all we can say right now. Okay. So that's it for this class. Next class, we'll talk promotions, which is our last P. Class after that will be kind of a case study and kind of a chance to participate and get participation marks if you haven't already. Then we start presentations, right? So the week of the 24th, we're going to have our first set of presentations, and then the week of the 1st, we'll have our second set. Okay, so I'm going to do signups for presentation slots. We can talk more about that next class. Yeah, so that's it for today.
Excuse me.
Sure.
You said that on the syllabus, it said that for the group project, it was in total 30%. But then